For thousands of years, we've been under the impression the Bible was meant to be taken seriously. Finally, a new translation that'll change all that. This is Oh My God, What the Fuck Bible. Reach out, touch faith. Welcome to the finale of Season 5 and maybe the whole thing of Oh My God, What the Fuck Bible with me, David Tuchman, at my house. Each week on the show, a guest joins me and tries to read a big chunk of my own personal translation of the Hebrew Bible while I make fun of it. This week on the show, I'm joined by Rabbi Sam Reinstein to read Vizot HaBracha, which in English is called, well, you'll see, the last section in the entire Torah. That means that with this episode, a pretty substantial portion of this project is finished. While I've absolutely loved making this show, I think it's time for me to take a break for a bit. That doesn't mean this is over for good. First of all, I'd love to publish these first 5 books of Oh My God, What the Fuck Bible as a physical book, so I'm going to start working on that for a bit. And I've also got other projects that have been on hold for the nearly 9 years I've spent working on this one, so I'm looking forward to focusing on those for a bit. No matter what, if you'd like to know what I'm up to, follow me on the typical social media platforms, mostly Twitter and Instagram, where I'll be posting, and any project that comes along, I will post there, whether it's related to this or not. Kind of sad to be stopping this, but I think this is a good point to take a break, if there's any point to take a break, and hopefully I can share more with you sometime in the future. Anyway, here we go. I'd like to welcome to the show. He is the rabbi of Congregation Kol Israel in Crown Heights. Please welcome to the show, Rabbi Sam Reinstein. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
I want to, as always, I want to get a sense of your background a little bit. You are
Sure.
a rabbi. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
That is. Yeah.
Okay. How did that happen? What was your background like? What was your
Yeah.
upbringing like?
Oh, that's funny. So I don't know. It kind of just happened. I feel like this happens with a lot of people,
You
with
fell into it?
with different jobs where you kind of fall into it. I know that sounds ridiculous. But like kind of I was in like different situations and I was like the rabbi of the group. I don't know what that if but it's not necessarily like the like learned one or the I mean it is kind of that, but it's not like exactly that. It's like, you know, like the pastoral kind of role.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of groups have that, where you have like one that like is always giving Divrei Torah, but not necessarily on Torah.
Mm-hmm. As
know,
someone
like
who's devoted years of their life to translating the Bible, I think I kind of get
yeah,
it.
it's like, you know what I mean? Like when you're watching a movie and like you're the one that's trying to think of like what's the meaning behind it, and everyone's like, that was cool. So
So you had a lot of fun with WandaVision this year.
yeah, honestly, it's amazing. Yes,
Okay.
we can talk about that for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it wasn't just there, but it was in camps and in schools. It kind of like was the thing that made sense. So I don't think I kind of like, yeah, it was, I kind of fell into it in the way that, I don't know, sometimes doctors fall into being doctors or lawyers fall into being lawyers because they're always like arguing with people and things like that.
So, but growing up, you grew up in a religious background, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
In that
like
case.
a fairly regular modern Orthodox house in Teaneck.
Okay.
Nothing too out of the ordinary.
Okay. And what is your approach or your kind of perception on Judaism now?
Yeah, so it's pretty close, I think, to what I grew up with. Some minor kinks, but some of those are political rather than religious, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think I've become more fervent in the kind of what I think could be like a positive modern Orthodox outlook. I find that specifically modern Orthodox Jews, at least sometimes, have their like are looking over their shoulder, but in both directions almost,
Mm-hmm.
where they're looking towards like, oh, the really religious people are those, you know, everyone wearing black and white, and like the really like people that are part of the world the are like the more liberal forms of Judaism, and you feel like you're not kind of either doing either. When I kind of believe that you really can do both,
Mm-hmm.
and I we'll talk about it later, but I feel like I think that's totally possible where you really can fully be part of the world, fully be, not just go to college and like learn like the classic works, but like watch at least some, if not a bunch of TV,
Hmm.
or like sports, or or be up on the music of the day, and yet still be fully religious and have a true connection with our tradition and God. So that's kind of where I'm at,
All right.
and yeah,
Well, let's talk about your connection to this tradition a little bit. This you're about to read a little bit of Torah.
yeah.
What's your experience been with text or Tanakh growing up? How much of it have you read? How deep into it have you gotten?
Right. I wish it's funny. It's not that much,
Yeah.
at least as a kid, right? It's like the Torah is the book that the Gemara quotes randomly, the Talmud quotes randomly.
Hmm.
But I don't know, like, classic, read it at my bar mitzvah,
Hmm.
kept on being one of the readers after that. But not too closely. I did more so in college and in my year in Israel before that. But I wish more. It's not exactly the focus, at least that I had. I don't know if you experienced something similar
No, that's
when you were a kid.
kind of the impetus behind this project a little bit was realizing that I never really read through the entire thing and wanting to
Oh,
find a
interesting.
way to engage in it a little bit, and then finding every translation that was out there a bit wanting or just not how I would read it or take it in.
Right.
And I'm probably going to take a long break now that I'm finishing up the Torah, but I'm looking forward to kind of taking this lens on Nach and the rest of it because there's so many
Cool.
interesting stories there. Um,
Right.
and that's something that you've kind of done. You have a new book out, isn't that true?
Yeah. So I just published a Haggadah, relating the Haggadah to Seinfeld. It's called the Haggadah About Nothing. And it's kind of doing what I think I was just talking about. It's, for what I see it is an example of it, where it's, I think, fully a Haggadah. You take all the Seinfeld out of it, and I think it's a good Haggadah with good commentary. But you take all the Torah out of it, and I think it's like a good analysis of Seinfeld throughout. And what I was trying to do is connecting those two things as much as I could, with obviously a ton of shtick thrown in.
Hmm.
Did a little bit of what you did here, where I changed the translation to throw in references to the show. I
Hmm.
do that about 100 times throughout, and stuff like that, where kind of to make it fun also. And yeah, it did make me, writing a Haggadah. I wonder if it's similar to this. Is writing a Haggadah made me focus more on the words than I even do. Like, we focus so much on it every Passover,
Hmm.
and it made me focus on it in a totally different way, because I was like looking for stuff instead of just being at the table and seeing if something comes to me. It's a totally different type of mindset when you try and actually put pen to paper, or fingers to keys,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was a cool experience, and I really love how it came out.
It's
So
a very deep
it's
kind of
very fun.
engagement with the text. Like you're kind
Right.
of turning it over and really questioning it in a way that you normally don't. I mean, it is part of what Pesach is, reading the Haggadah and debating about it, but in a deeper way than you normally would, which in
Right.
a way is fully embracing Jewish tradition and what Judaism is, I think.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
why Seinfeld?
Yeah. I don't know. It's my favorite show.
Hmm.
Is probably the simplest answer. But I do think it's particularly apt.
Hmm.
This is going to go a little bit into the introduction when if you read it, but I,
I'm
I,
planning on at the Seder, so I haven't read it
right.
yet. That's
That's fine. So in the introduction, I talk about this. I'll give the quick summary. But Seinfeld is usually called the show about nothing.
hmm.
I don't think it's true. I largely think what Seinfeld is a show of watching and characters that live a life of nothing,
Mm.
and you at the end thinking like, "Oh my God, I do not want to be them. They're awful, and they're hilarious, and I might want them as my friends, but I don't want them in my life. It's like, I
Hmm.
don't want to be that person. I don't want to be just." sitting around an apartment just talking about like the most banal things ever for my entire life, and you want to actually kind of like think about things seriously. I think that's the idea of Seinfeld. I think that's what it's actually about, is that like this is what nothing looks like, and don't be that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Seder is trying to force us to do that. At least Passover is, but I honestly I think reading the Bible is also where we're forced to kind of think about what really matters and how we're really connected to our history, and we're not just supposed to like hang out. Right? We're not just supposed to talk about random stuff about, not that there's anything wrong with talking about the weather and things like that. And that builds connection too, but that shouldn't be like the end goal, where we're talking about like the standard, just random rules of life. We should go deeper than that. And the Seder kind of forces us to sit down for a couple hours and do that. And I don't know. So I really thought that they're really teaching the same lesson, albeit from like the complete opposite direction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I offer another like mimicking the whole Seder? Can I offer another kind of perception on it? So what I was thinking is, in a way that these are Seinfeld and the Haggadah are two kind of seminal Jewish texts. In that, the Haggadah is the story of in a sense, is the formation of the Jewish nation, the Hebrews leaving Israel and becoming the Jewish nation outside of it. And in another way, Seinfeld is kind of the creation of this cultural version of Judaism. Like it's a very Jewish show, even if the characters aren't explicitly Jewish, and they all kind of are these forms of Judaism, or not necessarily that, because they're all horrible, but they're the kind of a Jewish id in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's the formation of like a cultural touchstone that people, express their cultural Judaism is. So I like that it's kind of marrying those two together and creating this, like you said, like the modern Orthodox way of combining the modern world and the world of Torah.
And it's something that I've even seen. That exact thing is something that I've seen, because I've been hearing random stories of people that found the Haggadah so far. Mm-hmm. And like a couple of people have been like, oh my God, I was not going to do a Seder this year. It's too complicated with family. I was just not going to do it. But I'm a huge Seinfeld fan, and like that's how like I most connect to things. And then I'm okay. I guess I'm going to. And it feels almost like it was worth it just for that kind of thing, because it's it is marrying it. Yeah, but I do feel like that's somewhat true. And I do wonder. Somebody even asked me this. I did like an Ask Me Anything. Somebody even asked me this, if a lot of people like stayed closer to Judaism because of Seinfeld. And I wonder if that's true. I mean, what you're saying, you think that it is true, that like kind of like that's a connection that was enough to kind of keep some people going.
I think so. Even if it's something to hold on to.
Right. Even if they're not religious at all, or, whatever. Yeah. It's interesting.
Practicing. Yeah. Where can people get it?
Right. So the easiest way is on Amazon. If you just look, the Haggadah About Nothing. There are some other like indie bookshops that have picked it up on bookshop.org. So it's definitely possible too, but I'm sure if you just Google the Haggadah About Nothing, you'll find it pretty quickly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you ready to read the Torah?
Yeah.
All right. Let's shift into another text and read the Torah.
Yeah. I imagine this was not the easiest parsha.
No, this is like this, and I think, oh no, I can't remember the name of it.
Hazinu was probably pretty hard.
Hazinu was hard, but it was fun because there was like stuff to play around with. I think this and where Yaakov gives all the bracha at the end of Bereshit.
Same problem.
Same thing. Where it's just like, what is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's like so poetic that it's hard to mess with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you end up stuck. You end up following a lot of what's already there because you're just like, first of all, I don't know any of these words. Like there are words where you like look it up and it's like, no, this is the only use of this.
Right.
And then in like the Talmud or the Gemara, they debate what it might actually mean. So there's not as much to play with, but it's interesting. But this is Torah, a loose translation, Book 5, Words, Episode, Parsha, what do you want to call it? 11. This is the blessing. chapter 53, in which Moses blesses everyone. Deuteronomy 31:1 to 33:29, and we do mean everyone.
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. This is the blessing Moshe, a man of Elohim, blessed the sons of Yisrael with before he died. Hashem came from Sinai, he said. He shined from Seir and appeared from Mount Haran. He came to River Kodesh. From his right, lightning struck. But he loves the nations. You've got the most holy in your hands. They'll follow your feet and do whatever you tell them to. Moses commanded the Torah to us, the tradition of the congregation of Yaakov. He was the king in Yeshurun when the heads of the nation gathered with the tribes of Israel.
Yeah, what am I going to do there? Like make funny diction?
Yeah.
There's not. Maybe something after lightning, but I don't know.
But I like the punctuation.
Yeah,
you know?
yes, that's where I really shine.
Yeah. No, because I feel like with the sentences as they are in the text, it's like hard to kind of like put it together what it's actually kind of saying. But this is really easy.
Yes, absolutely. So, there's a lot of v and like ands where
exactly.
it just keeps going.
Right? It's like one long sentence.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into those blessings, starting at the top.
Hey, Reuven will live and not die, even though there aren't much of it.
It's kind of a neg.
I mean, there are a couple of those. Where, I mean, and the last time you talked, Yaakov does that a bunch of times to his sons, where it's like, I'm going to give you a blessing, quote unquote. It's like,
damning with faint blessing.
Right, exactly. Hashem will listen to your voice, Moses said to Yehuda, and bring you to your people. Yehuda's hands will fight for him and be strong against his enemies.
Yehuda always gets the good ones.
Yeah, right? Be strong. Just win all the time. Give your and Turim to the man of kindness, he said to Levi, who you tested at Massah, who got into the fight at the waters of Meribah, who said, I don't see them, to his mother and father, who didn't recognize his own brother and didn't know his sons. All he cared about was watching over your words and keeping your covenants. They'll make sure Yaakov gets your commandments and Yisrael gets your teachings. They'll put incense in your nose and whole sacrifices on your altar. Bless Hashem, his substance, and make the labor of his hand good. Smack those who rise against him in the crotch. Do not let his haters get up.
Haters get down. So this is Aaron, I think, or like some allusion to the Kohen Gadol. I'm not sure. I don't know. Or just the priesthood in general.
Right. I mean, which he gets, right? Like,
exactly.
And it's he gets to do all this stuff. I guess now we're saying because he kept all the stuff, but we actually don't see that happening throughout the Torah, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, anyways. Beloved of Hashem, he said to Binyamin, relax safely on him. He is protected all day and is at peace between his shoulders.
It's a very short one. Binyamin doesn't get much, but he's liked.
Yeah. And he's the young one.
He's
so
the fragile one. He's the baby.
Son. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like you don't need that much. You get all the praise all the time.
Yeah.
Hashem. Should I continue?
Go ahead.
Hashem will bless his land with the dew of the sky, he said to Yosef, and the steaming depths underneath, from the bounty of the sun and the crop of the moon, the tops of the mountain from long ago, and from the bounty of the peaks that have lasted forever, from the bounty of the earth in its fullness, and at the will of the thing in the bush.
I really like the word bounty, and that's
they will all come to the head of Yosef and on the crown of the Nazir of his brothers. He will be majestic like a firstborn bull, guarding the collected nations of the world with his oryx-like horns. The many of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh.
I like that imagery. It sounds like for some reason that collective goring feels like it's happening in slow motion. It's so beautiful and violent and bloody.
Right. And it's like Yosef gets that. It's
he gets
following
so much.
up on he gets so much too.
Just like with Yaakov. He always gets
exactly
extra.
Right. Totally not fair. We're just going to continue that. Zvulun will be happy taking trips, he said to Zvulun.
Not during COVID.
It's funny. And Yisachar will enjoy being in their tents. They'll call up to the nations to their mountain. There they'll make sacrifices of righteousness because they'll take from their wealth of the sea and the hordes of sand.
All right, so they're the ones who do business. They're the
Yeah,
capitalists.
they got to go and do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whoever makes God good is blessed, Moshe said to God. He's like a lion about to pounce and rip off an arm and head.
Jeez.
Yeah. Right. It's like do you want the lion or the ox? But
The ox.
he takes yeah, that's definitely prettier than this. He takes the top because that's the section for the leader. He does what is righteous for Hashem, makes justice for Israel when the heads of the nation come.
So he's kind of like the diplomat, the Secretary of State,
right.
Or something. Except a lion,
yeah.
too.
Right. Except a very intense one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess this is the child of that. Dan is like a lion's kid coming from Bashan, he said to Dan.
Dan doesn't need a big blessing. He's can just be Don.
Right. I mean, he's always in the back, so it's like he's good.
Yeah.
He's like, I got this.
Yeah, he's just a lion's kid, whatever.
Yeah. Naphtali is satisfied by the will and full by the blessing of Hashem. He said to Naphtali, he will have the west and the south.
All right.
Right.
He's fine.
As long as the witches don't come with that.
Yeah. The wicked witch of the west.
Right, yeah. Asher is especially blessed from the sons, he said to Asher. Let his brothers like him and dip his leg in oil.
What? Sons. God kind of has a thing for Asher.
Yeah. I mean, I it's always talked about that, like the olives and the oils in his place, but still dipping his leg.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's metaphorical, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Again, why this was hard, I'm sure. His lots will be iron and copper, and he will be secure all his days.
Okay, he's got a good security system.
There's none like the El Yeshurun riding in the sky to your aid in his glory. This old donkey. I'll just be donkey Elohim is the answer.
He's really old.
Yeah. His arms are always under you. He chased the enemies away from you and said, destroy. Yisrael rests secure without a worry in Yaakov's home, in a land of grain and wine, skies dipping with dew. It is your happiness.
I should have done exterminate instead of destroy. Really missed opportunity.
Well, good. Right. It is your happiness, Yisrael, who is like you, a nation Hashem carried. Your shield of help, your winning sword, your enemies will run from you, and you'll walk on their backs.
That's chapter 53. There is one chapter left in this entire thing. Chapter 54, in which Moses finally kicks the bucket. Deuteronomy 34:1 to 34:12.
Moshe went up from the plains of Moab to Har Nevo, the top of the Pisgah, which is facing Jericho, and Hashem showed him all the land, Elad until Dan, all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Yehudah until the last sea. Also the Negev, the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, to Tzoar. This is the land I swore to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Hashem said to him, I told them I'd give it to their seed. I let you see it with your eyes, but you will not be able to cross there.
So mean.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm going to show it to you. Moshe, the slave of Hashem, died there in the land of Moab by the mouth of Hashem. He buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, near Beit Bor. No man knows where he's buried to this day. Moshe was 120 years when he died. His eyes were not darkened, and he was as vigorous as ever.
Sure he was. Okay, either Moshe or Yehoshua, whoever supposedly wrote that.
Right. We want to believe that he was.
Yes.
But,
out of 120 look this good, you won't.
It's a good point, right? It's like if we could even look that way at 70, or 80.
Exactly.
Yeah. The sons of Israel cried for Moshe in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Then the days of crying for mourning Moshe ended.
Even back then they did shloshim.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure this is where we learn it from.
I'm sure, yeah. This, and I think when Yaakov dies too, they do it.
Right. Yeah. Yoshua, son of Nun, was filled with all the winds of smarts because Moshe put his hands on him. And the sons of Israel listened to him and did as Hashem commanded Moshe. No other prophet like Moshe ever arose in Israel, who knew Hashem face to face, who did all the signs and symbols that Hashem sent to make in the land of Mitzrayim to Paro, to all his slaves and to his land, with the strong hand and all the big power that Moshe did in front of the eyes of all of the Israel.
And that's chapter 54. Wow. That's book 5. That's the Torah.
Wow.
Chazak, chazak, v'nid chazek.
Chazak, chazak, v'nid chazek. What a project.
Thank you so much for reading that with me.
Sure.
So now is the time in the show where we do a Devar Torah. Oh, it's like there's this feels emotional. I didn't think I'd feel this way, but I'm feeling it. But now is the time in the show where we do a Devar Torah, where we try to sum up everything we've just read into a single word. Can you think of a single word to sum up everything that we've just read?
Yeah, and I feel like this makes sense for you too. But like endings,
yes,
because it's not just the ending of the Torah. It's like, I don't know. I feel like it's an ending for each of those tribes. Like it's like a whole bunch of like, or it's like an after credit scene almost.
Yeah.
Or I guess 2 after credit scenes, which is perfect, right? Mm-hmm. Or mid credit and after credit, where like they're just having a bunch of endings, and they're just kind of like tying all the knots together.
Yeah. To me, it's, I think, like finality, which is a similar one too. Like it's just, this is it. This is, for everything up until now, it's framed, at least, in the context of a single author, of one narrator, that then switches when you get to Nach, and this is the end of the story. This is where we come. You were saying post-credit scenes. I'll go back a little bit further, before all the Marvel movies started, and it reminds me a little bit of the end of Return of the King, when you just keep having those characters come in one after the other, and you're like saying goodbye to it, and it's kind of just wrapping up what all these tribes are and what they represent at the end of the story.
Right. A lot of shows do that kind of technique. Like then the Community does that.
Yeah. It reminds me of like a season finale of The Wire or something, where you just like follow it around. There's a musical montage.
Right.
Community. What was the end of that?
I mean, they kind of each go around and imagine what like the next season of Community would look like.
I never watched the last one. That was the Yahoo one, right?
I mean, the last season kind of fell off, so it's not so important. But yeah,
or 6 Feet Under or something.
Right.
It's a finale. One thing that it made me think of, you mentioned, or not made me think of, this is it, but you mentioned that you read the Torah a lot after your bar mitzvah. One thing that's interesting about Vizot HaBracha is that, or which is what this is called in Hebrew, is that it's read on Simchat Torah, which is the holiday where the Torah is finished and the Torah is immediately started again. But I maybe I'm unclear on it, and you probably know a little bit better, but every man over the age of bar mitzvah has to get an aliyah on Simchat Torah, right? Or that's a custom in some places.
Yeah.
So growing up in shul, the men would they break out into tables, and there'd be a bunch of Torahs around the shul. The men would line up, and before Kiddush, they'd all just get their aliyahs one after the other. So the people who would read Vizot HaBracha would have to learn how to read it extremely quickly, because nobody wanted to wait.
Right.
And I remember...
I was in a large shul once, and they only had 2 Torahs to use, and so I read one of them, and somebody else, I read it 33 times in a row.
Oh my!
It was crazy. I mean, it's not very long, but still,
it's very short. I was trying to remember it while we were going through it, because I would do that. There were a couple of years when I was younger that did that, and I could like do it from memory, no more, but
right.
It's a fun one to read.
I bet if you picked it up, you don't remember it.
I'm sure. Well, I'm not going to say it now, but
yeah.
Yes. Does this bring up any other thoughts for you, or anything else? At least maybe the plot of this. Not that there is much.
Yeah. I mean, the end definitely does, because I don't know. It is endings, but it is kind of beginnings too, right? Like it's getting Joshua ready. It's blessing them for when they go into the land of Israel. Like it's like setting up. And I feel like that's what a good ending is.
Yeah, it is in a sense. Maybe that's the post-credit scene where Joshua takes over. He's getting them ready for the next. For the sequel.
And then all the tribes are ready too, because now they all know like what they should do. kind
Mm-hmm.
of, even though I'm not sure, like we all understand what exactly was meaning to be said there, but
They're ready to be a lion's kid. They're done.
but yeah, like it's kind of set up. It's like all these little setups,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that makes sense for your next project
Yes,
to do
exactly.
Navi.
We'll see. Maybe there'll be something else first. I'm still not sure what it's going to be. Maybe this will be a
Right.
book.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think too, what's interesting, there's just something so tragic about Moshe's story because
Mm.
he never wanted to take this on in the first place. He didn't want to be this leader, and then he ends up not being able to go into the land because like he just lost his temper too many times,
Right.
and that's a bummer. He can
And
look at it
it's like his whole like life's mission, right?
exactly.
Like it's not even to get them out of the lands of Israel. Like all the way at the beginning, it's like get them out of the land of Egypt to bring them to Israel. Like that's the whole
Hmm.
thing. And then he's so close.
He sings a song,
Um,
gives some blessings, and
right. But
that's
he
it.
does it, like he really does it,
He does.
which is crazy to think about. It's and I think that's why like there's no way like the whole thing about us not knowing where he's buried.
Hmm.
That would be such a
Oh my gosh.
that would be a disaster if we knew where he was buried. Like it would just like everyone would want to be there all the time. It would
Hmm.
be like way too much because he did this,
Yeah.
obviously not by himself, but like it's really crazy.
Yeah. I want to know where his mask is.
What because you want to wear it for COVID?
Yeah,
Is that why?
exactly. Yeah. That's the question. Moshe started wearing masks after his
Right,
face.
right. He did that first.
Yeah,
It's actually
exactly.
because there was a virus at the time.
Yes.
Um,
There were a lot of viruses. There were many
well,
plagues over the
I mean,
course of this journey.
yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That's really why he was wearing
Yes.
it. They never told him to wear a second one though.
No.
Did it
So
cover his nose?
so that's it. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about for this parsha or just the Torah in the totality. Um,
Um, no, I just love that you kind of you made this your own,
yeah.
Like I feel like really everyone, like we're not trained to do this.
Hmm.
This was very like I feel like when you're in rabbinical school you're trained to do this, where you're trained to like kind of make it your own, but even then you're not even really you're trained to like ask your rabbis and like stuff like that, but even you're trained a little bit to do it, but like I feel like your average Jewish person growing up is like not trained to do this, to make it like to own the text, not just to like learn it as something that somebody else wrote,
Yeah.
or that was given to you, but like kind of to make it your own. So this is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been fascinating in like discovering the things that I thought were true about this, or not necessarily true, but I thought were just plain, and then realizing the debate and the thought behind figuring out what something means or what a translation
Right.
actually is. And it's been really surprising and interesting. Um, I want to thank you for being my final guest on this. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
reading the Torah with
I,
me.
yeah. Honor to finish it. This is such a big project. So,
Yes.
um,
Um,
yeah.
do you have how can people follow you online? Remind them of again again how to get the
Yeah.
Haggadah.
Sure. My name's Sam Reinstein. It's Einstein with an R in front of it, and but no relation that I know of, at least. And yeah, to find the Haggadah, you can just search the Haggadah about nothing. You can follow it on Facebook. It's on Amazon or on a bunch of other sellers too. So that would be the easiest way. And yeah, thanks again for having me.
Thank you. As always, you can find the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the website. You can, if you want, email me at omgwtfbible@gmail.com. I do actually read the account, though sometimes I take some breaks. At any point after this, because even though this is going to stop for a while, if you want to reach out to me, please do. Um, as always, please rate and review the show on iTunes. It really helps for whatever we come back to. If you want to share the show, please go to a shul on Simchat Torah and get a transcript of every single episode and try to read it as fast as you possibly can to somebody nearby. That's a great way to do it. Thank you again, Rabbi Sam, for joining me. Thank you all for listening. And there might not be a next time. So thank you for listening. Bye.